Yeah, not 1920s filming. Okay, if it was 1920s, it would be a silent film. And I don't think that you guys have the ability to be silent. So, all right, slope-intercept form. If we're talking about slope-intercept form, just as a reminder, that is that y equals mx plus b portion, where m represents the slope and b is representing that y-intercept. Remember, it could be minus as well, so that's why I like to put plus or minus b. And what we are wanting to work on is sometimes instead of it being in slope-intercept form, which is what your entire test nicely was already placed in, you're going to have some concepts that will be in what's called standard form. So standard form is written in the format of ax plus by is equal to c. Ax plus by is equal to c, where a, b, and c are all number values, number representations. X and y are your variables. And what you'll have to do is you'll have to rewrite this so that y is isolated. Now, in order to rewrite, there are just two very simple, very straightforward steps to rewriting equations from standard form into slope-intercept form. So step one, and it does not matter, guys, if it is decimal values, fraction values, whole numbers, integers, it's always the same process. Step one, you're going to move your x term. So by x term, I mean the value that is paired up with the x as well as the x. You're going to move the entire term by either adding or subtracting. Remember, if it is a positive value, you will subtract. If it is a negative value, you will add, because we want to do those inverse operations. So you're going to add or subtract the x term, the entire x term, to both sides. By adding it to one or subtracting it to one side, it removes the x term, and then adding or subtracting to the other side allows you to place the opposite value on the other side of the equal sign. So that is going to always be your very first step. Move your x term to the other side by doing the inverse operation of addition or subtraction. Then step two. For step two, you are going to isolate the y. So remember, isolate, the term isolate means that you are getting it by itself. Okay, if you're sent to a timeout, that's isolation. So here, it's essentially you're putting your y in a timeout. So you are isolating the y value by either using multiplication or division. And when you're doing so, you're doing this to every, and that's very important, to every term. You're going to use multiplication or division to every single term in the entire problem. That'll allow you to have x isolated. Now, the times when we multiply, the only time that we actually multiply is if y is being divided by something, then obviously we multiply by what it's being divided by. Or if the coefficient for y happens to be a fraction. If it is a fraction, then you are really multiplying everything by the reciprocal of that fraction. You multiply every single value by the reciprocal, because we know that if it's a fraction involved, when we divide by fractions, you really are multiplying by reciprocals. So we're just going to skip the whole step of division and go straight to multiplication of the reciprocal. If the coefficient is not a fraction, let's say it's a decimal, or it's an integer, or a whole number, then you would use division to solve. You would divide everything by that coefficient. Okay? So let's take a look at a couple of examples. Number one, we've got 7x plus 2y is equal to negative 12. 7x plus 2y is equal to negative 12. Again, my first step, my step 1 says I'm going to move that x term by either adding or subtracting to get rid of it on one side and move it to the other. So my x term right now is a 7x. Am I going to add 7x or am I going to subtract 7x? Subtract, right? If I do 7x plus 7x, does it get rid of it? No. Okay, so that defeats the purpose. You want to make it go away here and move it over here to the opposite. So we're going to subtract 7x on this side and subtract 7x on the right. Now keep in mind, negative 12 minus 7x cannot be done because they are not like terms. You cannot combine those. You cannot go, oh, negative 12 minus 7 is negative 19, so I have negative 19x. No, you don't. What you have is negative 12 minus 7x. You cannot combine these through addition or subtraction because they are not like terms. One of them is a variable, the other is a constant. Okay? All right, by doing this, we're going to bring down what's remaining. What's remaining is a positive, because that's a plus sign, we have a positive 2y remaining. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that 2y down, equals, and because I'm wanting to put it in y equals mx plus b, I'm going to put my x term first. So I'm going to put negative 7x, and that negative 12 now becomes a minus 12. Again, I cannot combine those together because they are not like terms. All right, I've completed step 1. I now move on to step 2, and step 2 indicates that I need to isolate by either multiplying or dividing every single term by whatever is compared or paired up with my y. So I have 2y. Again, this is a coefficient. It's a whole number coefficient, so to isolate, I'm going to have to divide by 2. I'm not going to multiply by 2. If I multiply by 2, then it just gives me 4y. I'm going to divide by 2. But when I say divide every term, that means I'm also going to have to divide the negative 7x by 2. And I'm also going to have to divide the negative 12 by 2. I am dividing every term. Terms are created by separations of addition and subtraction. An addition sign or a subtraction sign will separate your terms. Okay? So I'm dividing every single thing by 2. And then I simplify it. Y is now isolated. Negative 7 over 2 cannot be simplified. So I'm just going to leave it as negative 7 over 2. So there's my m. And then, of course, I have x. And then negative 12 over 2 is just negative 6. So I'm going to put minus 6. There's my form for y equals mx plus or minus b. And I'm done. Very simple, very straightforward process. It's just 2 steps to being able to rewrite. Let's do another guided practice one. Okay, we have 3y minus 15x is equal to 3. 3y minus 15x is equal to 3. Okay, so again, first step is to focus on moving my x term. What is my x term? Leona? Negative 15x. That minus sign in front of it indicates that it is a negative. So what are we going to do to move it to the other side then? Add it. So we're going to add 15x to both sides. Okay, so what I'm left with on the left side is just 3y. What I've now created on the right side is a positive 15x, so I just write 15x. And I have a positive 3, so I'm going to write plus 3. Okay, now I need to get the y isolated, so I am going to divide, and I'm going to divide everything by 3. Every number is getting divided by 3. Every term. Okay, 3 over 3 will simplify to a 1y or just y. 15 over 3, I can simplify that to a 5, so I get 5x. And 3 over 3 is simplified to a 1, so I have a plus 1. So my slope-intercept form is y equals 5x plus 1. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to 2 practice problems on your own. See how you do. Try this one first. And then try number 4. All right, let's go ahead and go over this. So for problem number 3, we have 7x minus y is equal to 5. Inverse operation of 7x is going to be what? Minus 7x. Good, so we're going to subtract 7x from both sides. Now that minus y is going to come down. Don't forget that that minus sign is there, so it does act as a negative sign now. So we have a negative y is equal to negative 7x plus 5, because that 5 is positive. And now y is not isolated. It's not by itself because right now it says negative y. What's technically written here that we don't have? A 1. So it's a negative 1y. So instead of a negative 1, we want to go ahead and do the inverse, which is to divide everything by negative 1. So we're going to divide all values by negative 1. And that's going to give us y is equal to a positive 7x minus 5. A positive 7x, and I forgot to write it in green and pink. So we have a positive 7x, and then we have a minus 5. There's our final equation. Okay, for problem number 4, we have 1/4 x plus 3/4 y is equal to 6. The inverse, we're first going to go ahead and do the opposite of 1/4 x, which is to subtract 1/4 x from both sides. So again, it does not matter, it doesn't matter, let me make that x a little bit bigger. It doesn't matter that this is a fraction, it's still going to be the same thing. If it's a positive, you would subtract it. If it was a negative, you would add it. Okay, we're moving the whole thing to the other side. That's going to leave us with a positive 3/4 y is now equal to a negative 1/4 x plus 6. Okay, we want to do the inverse operation here to isolate. So are we going to multiply or divide here? Well, if we divide, what is it really? It's really going to be multiplication. Remember, I said that. If it is a fraction, if you have a fraction, you're really going to multiply by the reciprocal. So we're technically multiplying everything by 4/3. Yes, you can technically type into your calculator divide by 3/4 and it'll do it all for you. But you need to know that division of fractions is really multiplication when it comes to milestones. Those are the kinds of questions that will show up on those 10 questions that they don't let you use a calculator for. You need to understand that division for fractions is really multiplying by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply everything by 4/3. Okay, if we multiply all of it by 4/3 or divide everything by 3/4, whatever you said, y is then going to be equal to a negative 1/3 x. And then when we do 6 times 4/3, it's going to come out to a positive 8. So plus 8. And that's it. Okay, so what you're going to be doing now is you will get your computer and you will log in to Google Classroom and complete the IXL. And then you can work on your worksheet after that. IXL Smart Skill gets to a what? 70.